At the beginning of the episode, after handing over the selection letter, Ashito's mother becomes upset, saying soccer will make her son apart from her. Meanwhile, Hana, who is on the phone with Ashito, overhears his mother. Later that night, Hana calls Ashito again and questions him if he came to tryouts without her consent. Ashito yells at her, citing it's none of her concern. Just then, Shun, who's going through the diet plan sent by Hana, asks if Ashito is literally meant to follow it because it's a very well thought out plan. However, Hana confirms she just gave it as she wants Ashito to have a better physique and sharp mind. Once Ashito calms down, Hana suggests he talks to his mother and comfort her. Hearing this, Shun shares with Ashito that he has never seen their mother show weakness like that earlier. Elsewhere, Ashito's mother is drunk and she stumbles on the street while returning home from work. On the way, she regrets what she said to Ashito. When she reaches outside her home, she thinks it's better to act normal than to apologize. When she opens the door, she hears Ashito saying he wants to be a pro soccer player and earn enough money to make his mother's life easier. She's pleased hearing it, but to act normal, she bursts into Ashito for talking on the phone late at night. When Ashito mentions that Hana is from the youth club, his mother takes the phone and inquires about some details like how much it will cost to send Ashito for the training. Over the next few days, Hana and the other organizers give the ins and outs of joining the club. Things are turning out just the way Ashito wants, but still he hasn't gotten the chance to tell his mom how he feels. Soon, spring arrives and it's time for Ashito to go for his training in Tokyo. At home, his mother packs his luggage and wishes him the best. Ashito is sad when she says she won't be able to see him off. Later, he goes to his school to bid his friends and teachers a final goodbye. His friends get upset since he is a popular kid in school for his soccer abilities. Afterwards, Shun walks Ashito to the train station. On the way, he tells his young brother to inform him if he needs anything in Tokyo. Shun is worried that his younger brother will have to stay on his own in a new place. Also, he asks Ashito to thank Hana for sending a meal plan every week and for looking up answers to all their questions. As they converse, Ashito regrets not being able to talk to his mother. He mentions that whenever he tried to have a serious conversation, she always changed the topic. Eventually, he aspires to become a pro player and make his mother proud. Just then, he realizes he's thinking so much about his mother and he's not focused on soccer. Suddenly, Ashito's school friends arrive to see him off after the teacher allows them to leave school. When they reach the train station, everyone gets emotional and wishes Ashito good luck. Before boarding the train, Shun gives a bag to Ashito sent by their mother. Later, Ashito opens the bag and finds a parcel in an envelope. The parcel has a pair of cleats, whereas the envelope has a letter, bank book, and debit card inside. He reads the letter where his mother apologizes for brushing him off whenever he wanted to talk because she didn't want to be upset. She also mentions about all the costs she'll be bearing to fulfill her son's dreams. She asks him not to lose his temper and be sincere in his games. Furthermore, she writes she has always been proud of her son ever since he was born. Reading the letter makes Ashito emotional and he bursts into tears. In the next scene, Ashito arrives at the Esperion soccer club. Suddenly, he sees two girls screaming and running towards the field. Ashito follows them and to his surprise, the Japanese national team is about to play. While Ashito fascinatingly watches the national players, his friends from the tryout, Isaku and Tachibana, arrive. Turns out only the three of them got selected from the tryouts. Meanwhile, the two girls watching the match ask for Ashito and his friends' autographs. In the autograph book, Ashito sees the picture of a player named Kuribayashi, who is a youth team player, but he already practices with the national team. Turns out Kuribayashi is a special player and has many hardcore supporters who think he'll forge the future of not just Esperion, but also Japan's national team. Ashito realizes that Kuribayashi is only 1 year older than him and learns that there's a direct link from junior youth to the professional world. If you perform well, even a high schooler can play in the junior league. Later, Ashito and his friends go to the dorm and meet Yuma, who played against Ashito and his team during the tryouts. Although Yumi played with the first-year players, he mentions that he's from the third year in junior high. Just like Ashito, they were put on the youth team because they were short of players. Then, Yuma introduces his friend Asari. As the boys introduce each other, the dorm wardens hand them their kits and training gears, asking them to go to their respective rooms. After Ashito enters his room, he's all excited and ready to focus on soccer. The next day, Ashito and his friends do a photo shoot for the official player directory. Shortly after, Ashito goes through a previous official player directory and wishes to send one to his mother when his photo is published. It is revealed that Ashito's roommate has still not arrived at the dorm. Just then, Tachibana Tachibana introduces his roommate Kuruda. Later, the newly selected players attend an orientation program. The coaches and Tatsuya give guidelines to the players. Suddenly, Ashito's roommate Togashi, who is selected from the scout team, arrives. Since Togashi looks quite big for a junior league team and is also associated with a biker gang, everyone is shocked to see him. However, Ashito steps in and introduces himself to Togashi, giving him his jersey. When Togashi learns that Ashito is selected from the tryouts, not promoted from a junior youth team, he becomes relieved. Later, when Ashito goes back to his seat, Kuruda warns him to be careful of Togashi and asks not to trust him. When people start discussing if Togashi is really worth joining the junior league, the head coach says that Tatsuya is always right when it comes to developing young players. Then, Tatsuya announces an intra-squad game for the new players. Those who play well will be promoted to A-team. Hence, Tachibana suggests Ashito to pump up and give his best so that both of them can play for the A-team. However, Ashito decides to stay alone and rest until the match. Elsewhere, the head coach tells Tatsuya that he's against making the naive players play a match in new and unfamiliar surroundings. On the contrary, Tatsuya believes that there's no better way than this because it helps the players to get used to each other. Then, the head coach mentions about Ashito that unless he improves at a miraculous rate, he can't be a pro. Not only that, he warns Tatsuya that Ashito might become his first failure. When Hana overhears the head coach, she yells at him, claiming she is a fan of Ashito and asks him not to badmouth him. Outside the room, she finds Ashito, who's been listening to everything the head coach said. While Hana scolds Ashito for eavesdropping, she also gives him her lunch. As they walk, Ashito thanks Hana for persuading his mother and all of the help she did before his arrival. Hana gets excited and praises Ashito's mother, saying she's a very amazing woman who loves Ashito more than anyone. While they converse, Hana reveals that she's been rooting for Ashito because he reminds her of a player who's very special to her. Later, before the inter-squad match begins, the coaches inform the rules to the players. Ashito, who overheard the coach earlier, is determined to prove him wrong. He remembers all of those people who have supported him throughout his journey and promises himself to pay them back with his results. Soon, the match begins, and after some effort, Ashito manages to score. He aimlessly walks in front of the goalpost while analyzing the field with his bird's-eye analysis technique. Then, a few seconds later, he darts forward, breaks through the defensive line, and scores. However, Ashito isn't satisfied yet. He wants to score more to prove his worth to the head coach and get into the A-team. The head coach, who is keenly observing the match, believes that despite having a unique skill, a vital flaw in Ashito's game will prevent him from making the jump from junior youth to pro level. As the match continues, Ashito's lack of ball skills and tactics leave him behind. Meanwhile, the sponsor's daughter, Kaido, who's watching the match with Hana and the coaches, mentions that Ashito is unable to use tactics, so he's useless for the youth team. Hearing this, Hana gets infuriated. The head coach tries to make her understand that Ashito plays only with his intuition and doesn't even realize that the style of play has changed. Although he gives some amazing shots sometimes, he is unable to reflect on them and explain how he pulled them off. Also, he can't verbalize what he does and can't replicate it. Just like the head coach says, Ashito is confused during the match. He isn't sure what he's supposed to do and has no idea why every player is moving differently. With only 5 minutes left and no one passing him the ball, Ashito becomes anxious. Meanwhile, Asari, who's playing for the opposing team, mocks Ashito, pointing out that he's not special. Enraged, Ashito gets back in the game, but he's ignored. On the other hand, Yuma plays outstandingly and impresses the coach. He also coordinates and instructs his teammates well. Rather than focusing on scoring himself like Ashito, Yuma passes the ball to Togashi, who finally scores. Following that, Kaido explains to Hana that a player should be able to verbally explain their moves in order to give precise instructions to the teammates. The head coach adds that Yuma is an extraordinary player because he was the one who made it possible for Ashito to score by sensing Ashito's nonverbal intentions. The coach understands that Yuma has the awareness and skills to utilize the players around him. Therefore, after the match ends, Yuma is the only player to get into A-team. In the next scene, Ashito sits on a bench alone and gets upset for not being listed in the A-team. The miserable part is that he still has no idea why no one passed him the ball and ignored him. Although he scored a goal, it didn't help him get selected for a better team. Just then, Akutsu arrives and tells Ashito that he watched his match with Tatsuya and all the other seniors. The senior taunts Ashito for his poor skills, mentioning that he got ignored by his teammates for it. He then throws Ashito to the ground, asking him to go home forever. As he leaves, Ashito gets up and claims believes he'll gather himself up eventually. When Akutsu drags Ashito's family during the argument, the latter gets mad and starts yelling. However, a bully Akutsu kicks him and berates him for being an outcast. Afterwards, Ashito realizes that he might not have been committed enough during the match. Immediately, he runs to the coach room and begs to the head coach to teach him how to play with tactics. Elsewhere, Hana and Kaido talk about Ashito. Meanwhile, Tatsuya arrives and chats with the girls. While her brother talks with Kaido, Hana remembers how Ashito reminds her of young Tatsuya. Just then, a coach summons Tatsuya and the girls to show how Ashito has been practicing hard after the head coach asked him to learn some basic skills. While the others are stunned with his determination, Hana believes that he will definitely become a pro one day. The next day, a senior scolds Ashito for not passing the ball during the practice session. Since it's a very basic skill, the player is mad at him. Later, the senior's friend tells him that he has seen Ashito practice alone for hours after everyone goes home. Despite lacking the skills, the senior believes that the boy has a strong determination that will help him in the long run. Later that night, Ashito continues his practice alone. Unfortunately, he's not able to master the move. Meanwhile, his friends Tachibana and Aisaku arrive to help him practice and improve his skills. Ashito is thankful to his friends. The following day, the head coach shouts at Ashito for not having enough stamina. Since he has been practicing all night, he's not even able to stand straight. When the other coach asks Ashito to ease up on his extra practice, the head coach states that extra practices should never affect regular ones. Later, the kind senior who thought Ashito can improve talks to him and suggests he take help from his roommate Tagoshi, who's an outstanding player. Later that night, Ashito tells his friends not to practice since the coaches have asked him to relax and get rest. Afterwards, he talks to Tagoshi, who is impressed with his willpower and decides to teach him some basic skills.